What's up, everybody? This is Littlest here.
What's up, everybody? It's ICanSnake.
Greetings, everybody. This is CC Trainor-Ling.
What is going on, guys? It's James the Con Man, and I'm sick of these mother trucking pets on my Monday to Friday jet.
It actually fits.
Alright, so without further ado, let's go right into the plot. So the plot here is that Blythe trades in her beloved scooter for a sales kiosk so she can enter the International Pet Fashion Expo. Meanwhile, Rogers Airline launches a pet jet service, as the pets use it to launch one of their biggest fantasies yet. So let's go into the positives.
First overall positive, Blythe. Hello. I just can't find anything wrong with Blythe in this episode. Think, her making the sacrifice of her scooter just to get the kiosk to fix it up for her future designs, that's actually pretty mature of her.
And not a lot of people would actually do that kind of sacrifice.
Well, at least not many teenagers would do that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Kids like my age would. That's like a kid giving up their iPhone to save someone's life.
Oh, yeah.
Or selling, selling a computer or electronic device or some sort of expensive something to, just make ends meet. Not a lot of kids or teens would really do that unless they really had. Now, I know that really wasn't the case here. But that would be a little dark for a show like this. But anyway.
Yeah, and so my first positive would have to be the song, Pet Friendly Sky. Basically, one of the reasons this is one of my favorite songs of Season 2 is this was the first one of Season 2 where all the pets were singing, believe it or not. And this was how many episodes into this season?
This was the 11th episode.
Well, I think it's like the 11th aired, but I think this was the 20th produced according to the production codes.
20th?
I think so.
Yeah, it's the 20th in production order, but the 11th in broadcast order.
The song was just really catchy. This is definitely going to be a positive.
Yeah.
When isn't a song in an episode for this show a positive?
When it's bad.
It wasn't, it wasn't one for me last week, but it is for me this week.
Yeah, this song is fantastic.
It is for me this week, simply because I've said this a few times. I may not have said this in any of our reviews, but I've been put on record by saying this a few times that a lot of these sequences kind of make me think of Muppet Babies in a way. Because they'd have a lot of fantasy sequences in that show, and sometimes they'd be accompanied by a song. And I mean, it gave me a sort of a nostalgic, sort of vibe for Muppet Babies. So
Yeah. Another positive I have is the Pet Jet and Pet Fashion arc subplot, because this episode is a major turning point in both subplots. Without it, we would not have the kiosk that Blythe uses for her fashion designs later on in the series, specifically in the season finale, and I commend it for that. This episode also introduces the Pet Jet plane that's also used in multiple episodes throughout the series. It gives this series major continuity and callback to previous episodes.
Absolutely.
oh yeah.
Touching a bit on the whole Pet Jet thing, it really reminds me, I know that since you two will get this, but it reminds me of when I saw this interview when the people that work for MLP, obviously since they work for DHX, this kind of counts because they're both by the same studio.
Yeah, it's kind of an overlap.
Was that how they made the map, and the map can let them expand on their writing and creativity and everything in places they can go. I feel like the same thing is with the Pet Jet too, because that means they can go anywhere they want to, and they can come up with any kind of plot they want and take them anywhere. So there's almost like a bit of a connection here with both of them, is that they can both expand the creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And what's more creative than having a microwave in the cockpit?
That would be awesome.
No real planes do that.
Not really practical, but it would be awesome.
You don't
Assuming
know.
that there is any risk of death.
Is it time for
Yeah.
negatives now, or?
Don't you mean your negatives?
Yeah, my negatives, because I have
Yeah,
so many.
your negatives. We elaborate on. You negative Nazi.
Alright, so my first negative, it's something I immediately noticed while watching this episode because it's at the beginning. The dialogue in this episode sounds way too forced in my opinion. Jasper saying, "It does?" And then Sue saying, "What's coming here?" And even the pets dialogue in the beginning, it really sounds like they're just reading off the script directly with no emotion in their voices.
So you're saying that Zoe saying that the pretend revving sounds are working fine doesn't count as emotional?
A little bit.
Well, I count.
I mean, it doesn't feel like it sounds good.
Well, that's one Ekins' opinion.
Say. My second negative, this episode feels like two separate storylines in one episode. Around the middle of the episode, we get 10 seconds of airtime from each storyline before it switches to the next part of the other storyline. It's like an unnecessary part with Penny and Russell for 10 seconds, then an unnecessary part with Blythe and Young Me in Chinatown for 10 seconds, and then it switches back to Russell and Penny smelling Pepper's scent for another short time. It seems like this episode is too indecisive, where it could be much better if they had one storyline and then the next storyline in much bigger chunks.
Well, I think maybe it's because, there probably wasn't enough in plot A and plot B to make them really,
And
because...
that's the problem.
Yeah, I know, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It's not really a bad
it
thing.
did seem a little clunky, the pacing did seem a little clunky, but it's not enough to turn me off the episode.
Yeah, it's still good.
Like, sometimes if I just want to watch the pet plot, I just have to keep fast forwarding on Netflix to get to it.
Yeah.
But I gotta watch
Often
very
they're
carefully
bad.
that I don't skip it.
My last negative is with Blythe and the Biscuits when they're talking with each other. Blythe kind of sounds like a smart aleck when she's talking to the Biscuits. The Biscuits don't need to know what Blythe is doing for the International Pet Fashion Expo, so why is she telling them that she's bringing the kiosk to the expo? Sure, she could tell them why she bought the kiosk, but she doesn't have any reason to tell them what it was for.
Well, why not? Because I'm pretty sure the Biscuits probably wouldn't even really care anyway. I mean,
Well, I mean, if you watch the season 2 finale, you might beg to differ, but
Yeah.
at that moment in time, they didn't care.
Yeah, like if Blythe didn't tell the Biscuits what she's doing for the International Pet Fashion Expo or didn't even mention it to the Biscuits, she wouldn't have a conflict in the Pet Fashion Expo, the season finale.
Well, I guess in all fairness, the Biscuits probably didn't even know that Blythe could actually fix up that kiosk.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the only thing that I can think, because let's face it, the Biscuits aren't really the most intelligent when it comes to fixing things up.
Yeah, they can sometimes be a few fries short of a Happy Meal.
Is it time for overall?
Yeah.
I think it is. So, overall, for me, this was a pretty fantastic episode. I thought this was pretty good. The plot seemed a bit short, so it kept going from one to the next, to the next, to the next very quickly, and it just didn't feel natural. It was a really good episode. The plots were good, even though they were short. Song was good. Yeah, place was good, so I'm gonna give this episode a 9 out of 10. Probably like the 5th 9 out of 10 I've given it.
I'm not gonna lie, this is a very forgettable episode. One of the reasons I think it is because of the title of the episode, Blythe's Big Idea. There's already been 4 different episodes with titles that have Blythe's something in them. Blythe's Big Adventure, Blythe's Crush, Blythe's Pet Project, and now Blythe's Big Idea. I always get Blythe's Big Idea and Blythe's Big Adventure confused with each other because they have such similar episode title names. And although Pet Friendly Skies is a pretty good song, I always forget it's from this episode. It's a boring episode, but I'll give it a 5.5 out of 10.
As for me, this episode is the beginning of a series of episodes I sometimes refer to as the All Around the World arc, which ends with the Expo Factor as episodes 25 and 26, but for now, I'll talk about Blythe's Big Idea. I have to say, the episode does a very above-average job at setting things up for the Season 2 finale. It's one of my all-time favorite Blythe episodes because it shows how fully committed she is to doing what she can to succeed as a fashion designer. By trading her scooter for an old broken-down kiosk, it shows how mature Blythe can be when it comes to following her dream. She made a sacrifice, something I don't think many teenagers would do, since some want their cake and wish to eat it too. Yet even though she felt bad for trading her personal form of transportation, she handled the loss in a positive and realistic manner. She did say it was all part of her plan, so there's always a way around some random snag she would have had to have hit. People make sacrifices to reach their goal, and that's just what Blythe did, despite the minor setback, and it really paid off, as you'll find out as the series goes on. Yes, I know she could have called Mrs. Twombly to come pick her up, but remember, Blythe, like many of us at one time in our lives, was trying to prove she could handle things on her own, so I understand her not wanting to call someone for a ride. She was probably afraid Twombly would question where her scooter was, perhaps maybe tell Roger about what happened to it, or maybe not. We don't know. As she said herself, Blythe wasn't certain if she would get in trouble or if Roger would have been mad at her for trading a perfectly good scooter for an old kiosk, so she naturally reacted like any of us would have done in her shoes and simply tried to solve the problem by herself. I really can't fault Blythe on any of her actions in this episode because of how realistic they were. She obviously had young me helping her push that kiosk, so she wasn't really alone in the situation because she had a good friend who really believed in what she wanted to do. No matter what, Blythe has been smart enough throughout the series to figure out ways to get from point A to point B, so I have no negatives on her in this episode at all. That's all for the main plot. The subplot, on the other hand, I have to say was fairly nice. The song Pet Friendly Skies really fit the mood of the subplot all too well. Plus, it's not very often we see a secondary plot take place mostly within a fantasy. The sudden shift between the main and secondary plots may have been too frequent at times, but from what I've noticed from watching the episode several times over, there just wouldn't have been enough to make both plots equal in their own right. Yet that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's not like each plot dragged itself out too long, or didn't contribute really much of anything, or tried to rush off the plot as fast as it could, or even worse, tried to abandon each other's conflicts to make either one look insignificant, though I will admit that the airplane fantasy didn't really pose an actual threat in reality, but hey, it's fantasy and you get a microwave in a cockpit, so who cares? If we were to consider all of this, the episode is a really good setup for the rest of the season. If we were to go by production codes, where this episode was the 20th out of 26th made, the episode develops Blythe's character very well, and it contributes to the overall advancement to the story. This episode deserves a solid 9.8 out of 10.
Alright, I don't really have a lot to say on this episode, because if I did, I'd pretty much be reiterating most of what Cece said. So I'm just going to keep this one short and sweet. It wasn't that memorable, but it wasn't terrible. You know, it was a good episode, but really the only reason to watch this one would just be if you want to binge through a whole season. This is just like one of those trudge through episodes. I mean, like I said, it's not bad. It's good. It's just compared to a lot of the other ones we've gotten, it's just a little boring. Even the title, like Snake said, is a little bit on the generic side. Whenever we've gotten, you know, pretty good titles before. But, you know, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to give this a 6.5 out of 10. It's a meh episode, but, you know, it does have this, at least have, you know, the same good animation and somewhat decent writing. I mean, the writing's a little substandard here, but you know, everything else is, if it didn't have a song, it'd be more like a 4.
It's like Bakers and Bakers for me. It's one of those episodes where it's good, but it's one of those episodes where it's just meh.
I guess we could go on to randomizer time now.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Time to run that randomizer.
So next week will be season 1. So let's see what we get.
All right, big bucks, big bucks, big bucks, big bucks. Don't, no whammies, no whammies. Stop.
No
Next week will be Bakers and Fakers.
Wow.
Just how
I
Sylvia
haven't
was
seen
talking
this one
about
in a
Bakers
while.
and Fakers just a minute ago.
Isn't that ironic? I smell shenanigans.
Sylvia,
Yep,
what did
somebody
you
grab
do?
their broomsticks. We're going to declare shenanigans on this.
Alrighty, and this is Simulation 98.
ICanSnake.
CC Trainor-Ling.
James Conman.
And this is the League of Petshoppers signing off. We'll see you guys next week. Stay tuned for No Cab.
Peace out, home slices.
And keep those mother trucking pets off my Monday to Friday jet.
See you later.
guys later.
Hello everybody, Downloads Bacon here with my new jet awesome. But you see, the only problem I have is that it's a lot more than I thought, and I needed a jet that didn't cost a lot of money. But I already put the down on it. Not important right now. What is important is this review that I will have for you all today. So let's get started. Blythe's Big Idea, not to get it confused with Blythe's Big Adventure, or Blythe versus the Forces of Evil, or Blythe's Pet Project, or Blythe's Universe, or Blythe's Crush, or Blythe Meets Uncle Grandpa, and let's not forget Blythe's Day Off. That was a good episode also. Just don't get any of them confused. This one's separate. This one's about her getting kiosks. And speaking of Blythe was awesome in this episode also, since it was her big idea. But you see, what made Blythe incredibly awesome in this episode was just showing her like how smart she is and just how mature she is and how she is actually trying to pursue this goal of hers, and she will do trades and this and that just to get so. I don't know, to compare to other teenagers and everyone else at her age, probably wouldn't do it. So major props to her. Now I do have a lot of questions that I would like to ask that I already know the answer to, but I still asked when I watched the episode, was why exactly did she push this kiosk across town just to make it back to Littlest pet shop without calling Mrs. Twomley? I know she had the help of young me, but you still could have called her earlier. I mean, an interesting, not so interesting thing, I guess,
guess.
is that it was a Sunday. The reason I bring this up is because it was really slow at Largest Ever Pet Shop, and it was, by the looks of it, really slow at Littlest Pet Shop, since Mrs. Twomley, when Blythe called her, was able to respond really quickly. There are several answers that you can give me, but the correct answer that is actually the most intelligent, in my opinion, is that we need the biscuits to know that Blythe will be going to the Pet Expo. We do because it will create the conflict at the Pet Expo. Imagine the episode without the biscuits there. It would be kind of boring, if you ask me. Yeah, there would be the songs, but after that, nothing would really happen. There wouldn't be much for our characters to do. However, something else that was really awesome in my opinion was Roger. Roger Baxter was pretty awesome in this episode for being a really cool dad about it, especially just being very proud of his daughter for actually making a very mature decision. And of course, I mean, he bought it back, which is good too, and provided her with a trailer hitch, which brings me to another question. How is she going to take it back without any means to connect it to? How would she? I guess she could use a rope, but the chances of it actually going back from the thrift store to the pet shop would be more slim. You know, but everything happens for a reason, so what can you do? And of course, without all this happening, we never would have got Mrs. Twomley to be incredibly awesome. I remember the scene going something like this. That was awesome. Let's not forget the song, okay? That song was awesome. And let's not forget that non-forced dialogue. That was pretty cool. That was actually, the dialogue that was needed in order for us to progress and let the audience know about certain information. Since she's saying, this is coming here. You want to tell us what it is? They kind of ask questions that any other human being would ask. Yeah, so I'm not going to put this as a negative, and I think it's silly. Both stories tend to transition from each one to another really kind of fast, which I can agree that is a little bit of a problem, but it doesn't mean that there wasn't enough in each plot, because they were able to fill 22 minutes. If they had it where the characters just sat there and did nothing, and just nothing happening, then I would say they don't have enough, but they had enough to fill time. The only problem was just a little bit of a transition problem. That's about it. But I guess in a way they work with each other, since when one situation is like so, they go back to the other story, which is having a similar situation. Blythe being a bit of a smart aleck, I have nothing wrong with that, I guess, because they're both kind of rivals at this point. And yeah, in a way she needed to tell the biscuits, that way we can actually have a conflict, like I stated earlier, in the Pet Expo. Yeah, maybe at that time they somewhat didn't care, because they thought, well, actually they did care, because they're like, we'll see you there, and we're gonna mess you up. Yeah, we're totally gonna mess you up, totally. Yeah, Blythe is just saying, well, yeah, that's in a couple of months away, so yeah, you're not doing that. So with that in mind, it really shows the biscuits and Blythe's feud, so yeah, it's nothing wrong here. So I guess with that in mind, it's time to wrap things up. Overall, I thought this episode was pretty good, actually. It's one that is very solid, because of the idea that this episode is needed to basically start the plot of season 2. So it is very important, and if you get the titles confused, I apologize. Blythe has so many different things she does in her own show, but I digress. So overall, y'all, I'm gonna give this episode a 9.75 out of 10. Very solid episode, very good thing. So it's a great episode. I can't wait for the next one where I get to bake a cake out of historical figures. That sounds weird when I say it, but that's not important. I'll see you then. So thanks, and thanks again.